The main character is a blonde with snow-white skin who seems to radiate something claiming. Her name is Arendelle. It is very sad to remember, but the mother was a concubine from the very beginning, and it was in such conditions that the girl herself was born. I don't know anything else. Life turned out in such a way that life was, to put it mildly, not sweet. The half-brothers and sisters were real monsters, and therefore, without paying attention to anything, they humiliated and mocked the poor girl, using beatings. Even considering all the sorrow of the years of her life, the blonde cannot accept the ring that is persistently offered to her on the street. The girl is near the city market, where she was sent to buy food. An old man in a cloak, who does not reveal his identity in any way, only offers to try on the thing instead of paying for it. The beauty freezes, as if rooted to the spot. Such an offer sounds extremely tempting because she refused only because of the lack of money, which she was never given for her needs and expenses. Snatching the ring, the lady carefully twirls it in her hands, and then tries to put it on her ring finger as quickly as possible in order to stretch her hand into the air and look at its shine in the sun. Expectations are not always met, even if sometimes it is absolutely necessary. As soon as the thing is in its rightful place, an incredibly bright light begins to emanate from it, filling the space and almost blinding the eyes. The man, still remaining in place, as if nothing had happened, smiles. Muttering something under his breath, he says that the ring suits the young lady because it was made as if for her. The dimensions really match perfectly, and the glow is also suspicious. Hearing such words, the blonde only opens her mouth in surprise, unable to say anything. At that moment, there were absolutely no thoughts about this, so it was impossible to think that everything would change for the worse. The ring turned out to be imbued with magical power. Since the heroine put it on, she has managed to die and be reborn 4 times. What's weirder is that it was the same reason every time. The one who rebelled to become emperor was Prince Castian. It was this young man who was the ambassador of death, which was rushing straight after the young lady. Arendelle was never able to get a good look at his opponent's face. He was always one step ahead, skillfully using his vast knowledge, which clearly helped in battle. The first time everything happened quite spontaneously, because having sentenced the blonde to death, the man shackled her and then simply cut off her head in front of most people. The second time was no less strange, but no more inventive, because she was beheaded again, but this time with the help of a sharply sharpened sword, ready for its mission. Then the third time happened. The beauty was captured and taken to the castle, thereby signing her death sentence. But when trying to escape and save herself, hundreds of arrows hit her, which pierced her body with the speed of a comet. The last time was the most cruel, but the heroine didn't even have time to think. Blood spread in a scarlet stain right next to the motionless body, while in her head, the girl once again cursed Castian and his persistence. These memories did not bring any joy, but only anger. Swinging something, the blonde screams, as if asking what she should do, while again striking verbal blows at the prince, who is quite tired of her. Her strength has dried up, so sitting down on the bed, the lady lowers her head and sighs heavily, trying to get more air into her lungs. She definitely needs to find some other effective method that would be suitable in the form of a weapon. Strange thoughts pop into your head that would normally seem crazy. It might be worth meeting with Castian to talk about something. This seems like a crazy idea, but the flames of determination and anger splash in the eyes of the heroine, who will never find her peace as long as this boar is alive. The ingenious plan may work, so Arendelle decides to make attempts to seduce the brunette, who, suspecting nothing, will most likely fall for the bait thrown. Jumping out of bed, the blonde runs to the table above which hangs a mirror. Looking into it, the girl begins to examine herself, noticing the fact that she does not seem to be ugly. The date of Castian's rebellion has long been known due to the fact that this is not the first year of attempts. This year just happens to be when the girl comes of age. There is very little left until this moment. Until then, the maiden simply must survive at any cost if she still intends to bring her plan into reality. She's going to meet the prince, so it pays to be secretive. After all, having died 4 times, the girl realized that it was worth trying to change her life. The hand pushes the body to the side with unreal force. It seems that all the power is focused on her at the moment, and there is something concentrated at the ends of the fingers. The blonde is sitting on the ground because she was literally pushed out of the cart because she tried to say something, or at least somehow support the conversation that was actively going on all this time between people. The heroine had only 2 enemies. Number 1, Mortis, and Lilith Bellerophon. The guy shouts that the lady is a crazy girl, and after all the predictions, as expected, she has lost all her mind. The carriage turns around and speeds away, closer to the bridge, in order to get into the city, leaving the girl completely alone. These two never behaved according to their status. Today, high society gathers, and before the uprising, the prince of the city played a significant role in the affairs of society. Straightening her dress, which has long since become like a lump of mud, the blonde tries to get up. She came here only to beg the damned rich people, without any invitation. Rising from the ground, the lady quickly heads towards the forest. All this was done for the sake of her future, and in the end, it was not crowned with success, because no one wanted to help a person like her. Passing by the most vegetative area, the girl freezes and tries to understand whether she really sees something in the distance, or whether it seemed to her because of poor eyesight. Your eyes don't deceive you, because there's definitely someone there. A young guy lies under a tree on the grass, in a position as if he just decided to lie down and relax because he was bored. Deciding to take this step, the maiden approaches a few meters. She is lost, and therefore, in order to get into the city, she can ask him for directions, thereby helping herself. Everything was going smoothly, until the moment when, having taken a few more steps, Arendelle tripped on a small pebble, which, just in time, was waiting for her right next to the man. Stumbling, the girl thinks only about how clumsy she is. Preparing for her face to touch the hard ground, the heroine closes her eyes, but this does not happen, because the surface is suspiciously soft. The guy who woke up because of the rustling turned out to be an airbag. Rising a little, the girl lifts her head to understand what just happened and who exactly she is lying on, while knowing the answers perfectly well. The young man looks with his amber eyes, as if wanting to incinerate the beauty right on the spot, not giving her a chance to go anywhere. The man turned out to be none other than Keen, Castian's bodyguard, who helped with the task, which was too much work for one person. Handing out the letter, the brunette announces that this paper was sent by the prince. Grabbing the letter she sent, the blonde begins to smile as hard as she can, because she didn't even count on such a simple outcome. The man next to her asks if she really likes it, to which she nods. On the paper were words neatly written in beautiful handwriting. Castian wrote to his beloved Arendelle, whom he believes with all his heart, absolutely not knowing the whole truth. During the correspondence, the girl managed to learn a lot about her future husband. He turned out to be much kinder and gentler than she thought, because as practice showed after previous times, everything ended in tears. The bodyguard interferes with the beauty's warm thoughts, asking if she really likes Castian. Even if he one day changes beyond recognition, the girl is obliged to love him in any form. Trying to correct himself to give a more accurate picture, the brunette asks whether Arendelle will accept him for who he is, regardless of whether he becomes emperor. Freezing, realizing that everything has been planned for a long time, the blonde frowns and tries not to show her emotions, asks what the meaning of the question is, because it sounds strange. Kin turns away a little, not quite understanding what is being said, or is simply pretending so that a not-so-good shadow will fall on him. When it all just began, the man made a terrible impression on the heroine, because he behaved extremely strangely and always remained rude. Sitting on the roof, the couple is talking about something, while the lady abruptly interrupts the conversation and asks, as if clarifying whether Keen has friends, to which she receives a denial. She also has no one, so the offer to become friends sounds tempting. Turning towards the young lady, the brunette asks her to promise something. He is a man of few words, and this is one of his main character traits. The hesitations before the most important thing and the long pauses already seem familiar. Not quite understanding what her new acquaintance is hinting at, the beauty turns her gaze somewhere upward to the starry sky, which has long been lit up with thousands of lights. Again, looking somewhere into the distance, the guy asks him to promise that when his friend becomes sad, she will immediately find him so that he can help her, regardless of the situation and difficulty. Smiling and actively nodding her head, the lady agrees with this condition, so now they have concluded a kind of agreement. Then the couple became the closest friends who seemed inseparable, but only Arendelle herself thought so, who did not notice the impending disaster. A sword appears before your eyes, which is covered in the blood of the servants who tried with all their might to resist to the last. Sitting on her knees, the girl tries to catch her breath, trying to understand what is happening and why exactly now everything happened this way, thereby spoiling the whole situation. Right next to the beauty's body stands a young man who, calling her name, lowers his blade, again preparing to strike, but deciding to talk one last time. Virgo thought that Kin was her friend, but she was clearly mistaken, because the man turned out to be Emperor Castian himself, who is now seeking information. He asks to repeat once again what she said a long time ago. Such necessary memories pop up in my head when a long time ago the lady assured that she liked the prince, despite all his actions. She played a role, but no one knew about it. Smiling, the beauty, after the bodyguard asked again, always answered with only one word, confirming her honesty and sincerity of her intentions. Now the whole situation did not seem so rosy for the maid, who again sees death, which almost overtakes her once again, as if trying to take her with her through the hands of Castian. The man asks to deceive him, without giving any precise evidence in relation to this, trying to get the lady to talk. She just shakes, clenching her hands into fists, dropping to one knee, not paying attention to the people lying behind him. The guy asks to say just a few words in order to save his life. After this, the virgin will be able to be close to him. Approaching, being only a few centimeters from the frightened face, the brunette grins. The lady wants to live, so she found him for her own selfish purposes. A single tear rolls down the cheek, without giving any definition, because the lady is already tired of crying. She seriously didn't know that the Keen she could call her friend was Castian, who had killed her several times, and who now demanded that the girl say that she liked him. Mother always said only one thing, which turned out to be true. Something strange might happen to Arendelle one day, and then it wouldn't hurt to be especially careful. Running up to the bed where her mother is sitting, the girl carefully looks into her eyes and asks with interest why she should try to be careful. If the baby is frivolous, she may get into an unpleasant situation, which will then change all her concepts. This can happen even if you lose your vigilance, even for a moment. Such a small moment can ruin your entire life in the future and perhaps have worse consequences. The day when everything happened was indeed strange from the very beginning, but everything was compensated by the sun, which was shining brightly, and the blue sky, as if inviting. The voice, pitying the girl, complains that she has no money at all, and in general nothing at all, and no matter how hard she tries, she will not be able to get anything at all. The poor thing is too pitiful, and absolutely no one can feel sorry for her, because she doesn't want to ask anyone about what she should do next. Such strange advice sounds disgusting. The elder reaches out his hand and pokes his index finger into the body of the lady, who moves away a few steps. She has no family or parents, which is why she is so unhappy. The details are too specific, so the beauty quietly asks what the man means, approaching another meter and being one step away from the young lady. There are only pathetic people who live under the same roof with her, because she really has nothing left. Outraged by what is being said to her, the girl thinks about the words spoken. It hurts to realize, but the old man is right and seems to know the whole story of her life. Placing her hands on her hips, the blonde frowns, not asking any more questions as her interlocutor leans in even more. She just wants to leave and forget about this strange meeting. Suddenly, the old man grabs the young girl's hand, then takes something out of his pocket, and carefully, trying to be unnoticeable, puts something in his palm. Quietly apologizing, he talks about how sorry he is that he had to say all these stupid things. Looking into her hand, the girl notices the ring, because this is a kind of apology for the words spoken. Freezing, the girl examines the little thing, beginning to object. She cannot accept the ring just like that, realizing that there is no point in this because the gift is too expensive. Smiling and pretending that everything is fine, the heroine, trying to be friendly, assures the interlocutor that everything is in perfect order, because in the end, he apologized, thereby making everything better. Giggling, the old woman repeats her words. She doesn't care at all about the young lady's words, because she should still at least try on the jewelry, even if she later returns it. Nodding her head in agreement, the beauty accepts the little thing, because she simply cannot deny herself such luxury. Now plunging into these moments, Arendelle seems that she was bewitched by something from the very beginning, and the ring only accelerated the process of transformation into an endlessly living creature. Carefully putting on the ring, the girl did not think about anything, because all she could think about was how beautiful it would look on her in the daylight of the sun. Examining the finger, the girl notices a slight shine, which, as if on its own, begins to grow more and more every minute, hinting at how unusual it is. It's blinding to the eyes, so because of everything that's happening, you have to cover your face with your hand, hoping that this madness will end soon, allowing you to go far away. A few minutes later, the girl manages to open her eyes, removing her palm from her face and noticing the incredible shine that comes from the thing that was recently given to her. A voice is heard that claims that the decoration is very suitable for Arendelle, as if made for her. However, when she turns around, the girl freezes. She is trying to understand what it is. Confusion grips the inside, because there is no one around who looks like an old woman in a cloak. People scurry back and forth about their business, completely ignoring the abnormal person. Fear is shown on the face, and then, preventing you from thinking sensibly, it blocks all the ways to try to remove the ring from your finger or search for the person who is just standing next to you. It was this moment that became the key in the chain of events in the heroine's life, and it was this moment that she later very much regretted. When the girl was only 2 years old, her mother became a concubine in the Bellerophon family, where the head, of course, remained the hated duke, who did not care about anyone around him. Without hoping for anything, the blonde tries to turn the situation in her favor in order to provide herself and her daughter with at least something. Asking whether a man would definitely do such an act, the beauty receives an easy consent, because everything was already decided a long time ago, without any people who live in the castle as servants. The mother's only condition was to give the baby the surname Bellerophon, so that in the future she would not have even bigger problems that could not be eliminated in any way. Only 5 years have passed, which turned out to be a real torment in reality. The girl's mother could not stand such stress and terrible attitude, so in tears, she always begged her daughter to do something for herself in the future. Seeing the worst changes in character is one of the worst things in this world. Grabbing Arendelle's shoulders, the woman always asked her not to live like her, but to find a better way for herself. Asking not to do this ever, the mother went to another world, leaving the baby completely alone. Her last words were precisely this remark, which was very useful. Fate did not work out as expected, so the Duke did not give his last name even after the death of his concubine, although he promised to do this more than 10 years ago, at the very beginning of his journey. After the contract was broken, the bullying from the brother and sister only got worse. Lilith very often dragged the heroine by her snow-white hair, humiliating her in every possible way, showing that she was much worse than her. The brother, in turn, did not lag behind, always kicking the girl, being in even greater gusts of inexplicable anger, which was directed entirely at his free sister. Thoughts that seemed the darkest never gave rest, making me think about just running away for the sake of freedom. At the age of 18, the beauty tried to forget her mother's will, realizing that it would be better this way. It was in this year, according to legend, that Prince Castian raised an uprising with the help of consequences, ready to seize the throne and become emperor. Giving orders to his loyal knights, he wanted them to catch all enemies, including the Bellerophon family, which was listed as one of the most loyal to the state and government. The first to be caught due to her ineptitude was Arendelle. She tried to prove that she did not belong to the Count's family, because she did not even have the Count's surname, which he denied her, but everything was to no avail. The half-brother and sister mocked with words in every possible way, realizing that no one was listening to the hated person and was not even going to listen, even though she shouted that it was true. The estate of a well-known family was burned that same evening after all the prisoners were locked in it, preventing them from attempting to escape. Sitting in the closet and wondering why she was also killed in her past life, the girl tried not to cry, because life was clearly unfair to her. If she had a better chance at a normal life, everything would be much simpler. There would be no bullying from other people, and much more. If the girl had wealth, or at least a high social status, she certainly would not have been able to remain as unhappy, being at the very bottom, remaining completely alone. The executioners, standing one step away from the stand where all the actions will take place, are talking about something. One of them is very happy that the Bellefonts have finally been caught, but the second interrupts him, saying that he has more interesting news. While shackling the blonde, the man says that someone warned the family and they were able to escape, leaving only one captive, who was found on the estate. Nobody caught them, even if there were many reasons for this. This information makes Arendelle cry, because she hoped that the Duke would finally get what he deserved. The death penalty process seems to take forever. The former family and Castian are bound to get what they deserve one day for everything they've ever done. I would like to sincerely hope that the prince dies from a lightning strike. In my head, I hear the voice of an old woman who says that she will be glad if the girl likes her gift. Grabbing her neck, the heroine tries to gasp for air just to make sure that everything is fine. Freezing, the blonde looks around. A quiet sigh of surprise escapes your lips, as if by itself. Grabbing her body again, the lady tries to feel it to make sure that she is really safe and sound, although she does not understand what is happening at all. Carefully running her fingers along her neck, the girl strokes the skin. She is definitely safe and sound, although it still seems to her that the inevitable is about to happen. Looking around the crowd of people, the beauty turns her head, hoping that someone will give her the answers she needs most now, besides water. Without concentrating on anything, the girl understands that this is exactly the place where she took the ring, or rather, it was simply shoved into her palms, persistently begging her to try it on. Standing in the middle of the bazaar, the blonde blinks her eyes, slowly beginning to realize the whole situation as a whole and what could have happened to her in the past. She had just died, but now somehow everything was back in her hands, because this is how the first revival of Arendelle happened, despite the fact that she did not plan it at all. In the Trapeum Empire, there is one ancient tradition that no one has ever been able to interrupt in this life. Only the one with black hair can become emperor. For some reason, in family circles it was believed that the darker the hair, the higher the divine power of a person. Only a dark-haired man can take the throne, because there is no other option. It was not so important how many children the emperor had, because only one child with black hair could be born in a family, thereby immediately becoming a follower of the father. This time it was different. The first son that Empress Julian gave birth to, Prince Jupiter de Pere, had hair of the right color, thereby getting in line. There was another son born from Thalia, a concubine who went missing and returned when he was 14 years old. Prince Castian de Pere, also with hair blacker than tar. Both heirs were similar to each other, having only slightly different characters and facial features, not identical in identity to each other as two peas. It is for this reason that the situation around the crown is not entirely calm, and this is quite logical, given that this has never happened before. There was complete silence in the Belfon estate, and only an excited female voice tried not to wake anyone, almost shouting that something strange had happened here. Leaning against the wall, the girl sighs. She simply could not die and be resurrected, because it was easier to believe in something even more absurd. It all looks like someone's cruel joke or a dream that you want to forget. Drilling her eyes into the objects in the room, mindlessly staring into the distance, the blonde realizes that she is most likely right, and she just had a nightmare. Memories came into her head, as if trying to remind her of her existence, and trying to remind her of everything that had happened, convincing the lady that every picture was reality. It seemed strange, but feeling this pressure on her neck again, the girl was transported to the moment when she screamed to be let go, while insulting Castian. Then there was no choice but to believe in rebirth. But deciding to make sure that this time she would not die, the maiden ran away so that she would definitely not be caught. Everything went well, but in the forest she was attacked by guards from the prince's infantry. They chased the lady and then made sure that she was overtaken by the failure, which this time should have passed by. The information the Duke received could be used to escape. She had already tried to break into the palace, so she tried to talk to her stepfather. The reaction was not the most rosy, because the man did not want to believe. Screaming that this was complete nonsense, he was indignant, because the girl dared to lie to him. The Empress has enormous influence in the palace, which means this will not happen. After numerous failures, everything seemed lost, so the blonde began to think that her life would always be locked in the wheel of death. The heroine continued to die, which means it was necessary to come up with something else, something more interesting, because without a plan, nothing will work. The result turns out to be deplorable, because it's all about the ring. She came to the conclusion that she manages to be resurrected every time only because of the jewelry, because it, like a talisman, saves the girl's soul. The cause of death always remains the same, and this was clear without any mental calculations. Castian became the man who killed Arendelle over and over again, remaining merciless. The blonde simply had to find another way to at least somehow change the course of events. The first point in the plan was a meeting with the prince, although this seemed absolutely absurd. A man, as you know, participated in social life in order to monitor the dynamics of the mood of the nobility and the people around him, which means that a lady is obliged to join society. The beauty did not have an invitation, because she was going to show up there just like that. It was not necessary, given that the plan in my head had long been compacted, taking into account all the punctures and possible losses. This is exactly how the lady should have a meeting with Castian. If everything goes according to plan, she will be able to get closer to the man in order to get as close to his plans as possible. Everything should be in the best possible way. And perhaps the blonde will even be able to seduce the guy, because looking in the mirror at her reflection, she did not consider herself ugly. In 2 days, that very cherished day was supposed to come for the fulfillment of the first step. In a meeting with Leisha County, the girl asked to stop the carriage and take her out onto the street. Brother and sister, who remained the most hated people in the world, will travel along this very road. The lady managed to bribe the coachman, so she can do the same too. From a distance, the necessary carriage is visible, and at that very second, a smile forms on the beauty's face. This is Duke Bellerophon's coachman, who is obliged to take the heroine to the castle. Instantly jumping onto the road, the blonde spreads her arms, forcing the horses to stop, and the coachman to try not to hit the beauty on his way. A few minutes later, the girl was already sitting in the carriage, leaning back and smiling, realizing that everything was turning out as best as possible. She asks to leave in order to arrive at the place faster. Lilith, sitting next to her, quietly asks what is happening, because she feels like something has definitely gone wrong. Mortis, adjusting his glasses, can no longer hold back, so he starts screaming. He asks what Arendelle is doing here. This partygoer definitely couldn't miss something like this, so it was logical to meet him in the carriage. Clasping her hands, as if in a pleading gesture, the blonde begs to be taken to the meeting too, to which Lilith hears displeased muttering. She asks her brother to stop the coachman, because if this creature is with them, they will become a disgrace. Exclaiming again, already insisting, the girl asks for an indulgence, but only this time, especially since she will not even be noticed, and her presence will be more like air in its transparency. The screams get louder when the sister asks if she wants to disgrace them, since she is trying to ask to be taken with them, even if the lady promises to sit in the corner. Grabbing the dress somewhere near the neck, the man begins to shake the girl, repeating that there is not an ounce of meaning or logic in her words. The heroine is called a parasite, with absolutely no intention of trying to protect or do anything else, but rather vilifying her. No longer intending to endure it, the blonde carefully raises her hand, talking about something and asking if her brother knows the feeling when his head disappears from his shoulders. Grasping the guy's neck with her hands, the main character still won't shut up, saying that her brother knows exactly how to feel it. If the head falls, it will be like an apple falling from a branch. Raising her palm higher, the girl buries her fingers in her hair. It was quite realistic when the apple jumped up in front of people's eyes like a ball and rolled in front of all the people standing around. Deciding not to continue her interesting story, the blonde grabs Mortis's clothes, already openly threatening. She begs him to leave her alone, while Lilith simply asks him to show her mercy and sit down. Realizing what just happened, the girl takes a few steps back. Everything did not go as it should have, because another conflict occurred on its own. The heroine simply lost her temper. The hand breaks out of the beauty's strong grip and swings, intending to do something irreparable to push her out of the cart. Left completely alone on the street in a sitting position, the girl looks in tears at the speeding transport, listening to the glory of how strange she is. Quietly exhaling air and trying to calm down after everything that has happened, Arendelle cannot understand why her free relatives are so nasty and arrogant. Rising from the ground, the girl shakes off the hem of her dress. Everything that happened is completely unimportant because she managed to get into the Count's territory, which means the job is half done. It's already evening outside, but the moon has not yet appeared, indicating that the sky is quite cloudy, which means it will rain. The conclusions that everything is fine were made too hastily, because the lady understands that she does not understand exactly where she is and where she should go. Walking to the side to try to find her way home, the girl realizes that she is out of luck, because there is something or someone in the distance. A man lying on the grass clearly attracts attention, but at the same time sows a seed of doubt, because who would lie unconscious in the middle of the forest? Turning his gaze to the horse, which stands just a meter from the body, Arendelle thinks. The man looks like an aristocrat, which makes him even more attractive. Beautiful dark hair sways a little from the light wind that tickles it. The eyes are closed, not giving any reaction to the stranger at all. Stuttering a little, the girl thinks about what she should do next. The guy shouldn't take a nap now, because this is not the right place. The best solution, for sure, would be to simply wake up the young man. Lifting her dress to quickly approach the victim of the dream, Arendelle advances towards her new future acquaintance, looking warily at her feet. Caution did not help, because a pebble in the way thwarted the entire plan, no matter how small it was. With wild screams, the main character falls on something soft, immediately understanding what's going on. Feeling movements from below, she wants to burn out of shame, because she did not think that something like this would ever happen to her. Focusing on the young man, the girl rises a little to look into his eyes. He doesn't express any emotions, except the anger that fills everything around him. Trying to get up, thereby lightening the man's burden, the beauty simultaneously asks for forgiveness, because she doesn't want to get into new troubles that will be even worse than the previous ones. Taking the sword out of its sheath, the young man shows his quick and well-practiced reaction, which he has developed since childhood. Without trying to take the life of his companion, the brunette deftly turns over, ending up on top of the woman who is trying to toss and turn, thereby freeing herself when asked who she is. Holding the blade to his neck, the guy doesn't seem in the mood for a friendly relationship or to simply let the girl go. The bright lights still glow in the eyes. Leaning even closer and grinning a little, Castian seems to rejoice in the fear of the victim, who is trying to crawl back. An unconcealed note of pleasure flashes in a smile and all emotions at the moment, trying not to put pressure, but at the same time making no attempt to come to terms with his temper and let the beauty go. The man orders her to answer his questions if the girl does not want to be killed. Freezing in horror, the girl blinks her eyes, digesting all the information she has just received, which is becoming too much of a burden. The chest heaves as if there is not enough air in the lungs. The heart is beating so hard that it seems as if it is about to jump out of the chest and run away, because excitement prevails. The voice, cold as ice, repeats its question once again. He needs to know who this woman is, and she must answer without any resistance. Seeing the blade, the girl shrank, just like her entire insides. Memories came flooding back at once, thinking about pictures of what had happened to her the past times due to carelessness. Realizing that the silence is dragging on for an indecently large amount of time, the man chuckles. It seems that the lady is not going to give any answers to the questions posed. Because of ignorance, she will have to die, even if she doesn't really want it. The eyes widen, realizing that a few more seconds, and all efforts will go down the drain. Starting to scream, the blonde sharply puts her hands forward, thereby knocking the sword out of the hands of Castian, who freezes, not understanding what just happened. The weapon, as if having lost any attractiveness, lies somewhere off to the side on the grass. To get the saber back, you will have to stand up, thereby freeing the beauty. Arendelle jumps up from her seat and, as if rooted to the spot, freezes a few meters from the brunette, who is piercing her with his eyes. It's strange that things turned out this way. The guy clearly remembers that he held the sword tightly, so this strength raises questions. The eye is attracted by the ring, which even without sunlight gives off a slight shine that blinds the eyes of a knowledgeable person. The fist clenches, thereby slightly hiding the stone. Understanding everything, the man suddenly breaks down and runs up to the girl, still standing motionless on the side. He cannot miss such a valuable thing. A hand grabs the lady's wrist, squeezing her hand tightly, leaving purple and red marks. It's definitely not worth it, but you need to check the authenticity of this jewelry. Just a few steps away from Arendelle, Castian lifts her hand a little higher, placing it at eye level. Asking if this ring really belongs to the young lady, the man squeezes her even tighter. Nodding slowly, the girl confirms the prince's guesses, but then asks if this little thing is familiar to him. The silence in response literally kills. Changing the topic, the guy again persistently asks the beauty's name, to which she tries to object. You can't force him to repeat his question millions of times, so this indulgence is the last warning. Everything is not so simple, so at any second it could simply collapse. Make at least one wrong step, girl. This psycho doesn't need to know the blonde's real name, so he has to improvise. This man will most likely not be seen again, so he might introduce himself as some kind of aristocrat. The fictitious name becomes Elizabeth Lunar. A male voice with great doubt clarifies whether she is exactly the same daughter of the Lunars, to which she receives a nod in response and a kind smile with which the heroine tries to brighten up her situation. The real Miss Lunar is in very poor health, so she doesn't leave the house. No one except her parents knows exactly what she looks like, so the legend must work at its best. Grunting, as if believing in the correct legend, the brunette talks about how glad he is to finally meet such a famous lady. Trying to smooth things over, the blonde assures that everything is fine. Looking at the girl with a penetrating gaze, the man does not give himself away, but he himself understands the whole situation. It's amazing to see the sign since the Lunar's daughter died last month. Laughing nervously, realizing that she has been discovered, the beauty tries to get out of the situation. There is no law that prohibits walking in the Count's domain, but the man insists on finding out the real name of the maiden. Deciding on another deception, the blonde calls herself Karina Dorvan, but she is interrupted. Na left to study with her brother, so these words are simply not valid. Now the unhappy end has definitely come. Lies don't go away just like that, so the guy bends down to the ground, saying that he was interested, but he was bored. Picking up the sword from the ground, Castian no longer wants to play this game. If the girl lies again, she will definitely lose her head, thereby putting her life at risk. Trying to move away, the beauty, as if weightless, dreams of flying into space. If she is killed again, then there will definitely be no new plan, or the ring will decide not to work again. This psycho is completely out of his mind to set such conditions. Arendelle would like not to reveal her true identity, but it seems that it is easier to do everything this way than to be left without a head later. Taking a few more steps back and putting her hands forward, the blonde says her real name, simultaneously shouting that it is the truth. She wants to live and is right here without any problems. Lowering the blade, the prince asks where the young lady lives, to which she names the surname Bellerophon. She is an adopted daughter, so she is not called exactly the same as everyone else belonging to this family. Grunting, the man thinks for a moment. Her name is indeed Arendelle, which means this time it's definitely true. There is no point in continuing to try to threaten or do anything else. The gaze switches to details. If you look closely, the dress is worn, and such a girl in such an image will definitely not be allowed to the party, no matter how much she would like it. The lady has a pretty face. Smiling, she asks why they look at her like cold cuts, even if she already knows the answer to her question. Quietly asking what the blonde meant, the brunette realizes that it was just a joke. A brown-haired man comes into view, rejoicing at having found the prince after a long search. Taking the man aside, the boy begins to ask some questions that no longer reach the ears of the main character. The conclusions come naturally, because this must be the servant of this psycho. Judging by his clothes, he is also of noble birth. The man is Castian's personal knight, namely Cliff Bardell, who reiterates how glad he is that he didn't have to spend half his life searching. When the guy wanted to say the cherished words with his name, he was interrupted by a rude voice, which made the person standing next to him feel embarrassed. This reaction seemed strange. Bowing down, the young man apologizes, because he is to blame. However, after this, he immediately changes the topic. He is only there to inform the owner that the party has just ended. Hearing these words, the blonde breaks into a scream, showing her annoyance. Not much time has passed, which means we can assume that all this is absolutely unfair. Something happened in the afternoon, so everything happened this way. However, the lady does not want to come to terms with what she heard. She doesn't understand why all this is happening to her, and today. Saying her name, the girl asks where the party is taking place, to which they point a finger to the side. Conspiracy and other nonsense are not important, because it was already revealed a long time ago anyway. Thanks to the steam, Arendelle heads off, turning only to bid farewell to the boys before quickly leaving. Lifting the hem of her dress, the blonde noticeably speeds up when, as if in her head, one single thought is spinning. She needs to get to the gym in time, and perhaps she still has some time. Castian looks quite calm, only frowning while the knight looks more confused, because he didn't even know the name of this person since he arrived much later. Turning to his interlocutor, he says his guesses, because he thinks that this is the same lady who is extremely unusual, and also the adopted daughter of the Bellerophons. The man nods, as he already understands who exactly this girl is. Prince Castian de Pere is preparing for a coup, so knowing the names of people in society will help him a lot in this case. Sighing, the guy wants to quickly forget what happened. However, the only option left is to switch to information, so he turns to Cliff. It is worth studying this girl very carefully in order to collect as much information as possible in the future. Bardell bows, promising that he will take care of it so as not to bother his friend. Only a few hours have passed since the holiday. The heroine moved back to the duchy, while being in a bad mood after everything that had happened today. Walking into the main hall to simply occupy herself while thinking about something, she notices the maids preparing the dining table for the family's upcoming dinner. Getting into her room, the beauty closes the door as quickly as possible and then falls on the bed due to a complete lack of strength. It was true, because the party really ended then, no matter how sad it was. The beauty tried very hard to get there in time to begin turning her plan with the prince into reality. However, Everything turned out badly because of Mortis with problems in his head and an incomprehensible guy who is a threat to life. Burying herself more and more into the pillow, the blonde is ready to cry from frustration. Now things are much worse, and the worst thing is the fact that she has absolutely no idea what she should do. Pulling herself together, the heroine decides not to destroy herself ahead of time. Resting her hands on the bed, she sits up a little, saying no out loud. Determination is not the strongest trait, but now it's worth using everything to the maximum. She will definitely have a chance to meet Castian. If something has changed today, this does not mean that nothing will work out next time. Clenching her hand into a fist, the girl turns her gaze to the ring, which still shines brightly. Tomorrow, she will go look for that granny to get more answers she needs. An image of an old woman pops into my head, talking about how the jewelry suits a young lady. The person must find out exactly why she gave her the resurrection ring. It was with these thoughts that the lady fell asleep. And the next morning she went to the very market where she had been, it seemed, so long ago and recently at the same time. The beginning of the search became the most difficult, because it seemed that no one had seen the right person. Approaching an older woman, the blonde, hoping for a positive answer, hears a refusal. The next victim is a man who, hearing about his grandmother's height, simply passes by, as if trying to avoid any interrogations, rushing about his business. Running after him, the heroine loses hope, because it seems that no one has really ever met the old woman. Sighing, the girl understands that she cannot give up, but now this will be the best decision. Moving back, she stumbles upon something, not immediately understanding what exactly is the obstacle. Realizing that this is a living person, Arendelle quickly apologizes, because sometimes, if you don't have time to do this, people simply become aggressive. After a few seconds, the girl freezes. Her eyes widen, as if she had never seen this person in her life, given that everything becomes clear, even without words. Jumping to the side, the girl immediately begins to stutter, not having the strength to believe in everything that is happening. It seems unreal that she managed to meet the same man again, who seems to be in hiding. Lowering his hood and revealing his face, the young man looks angrily at the clumsy person who calls him crazy. Amber eyes, like those of a cat, are focused on the face, moving down and looking at the ring. Squinting, as if not understanding what just happened, the guy thoughtfully asks if the girl really called him such an offensive word. You can see from his face that he was not offended, because this is all being done just to make fun of him. It seems like he heard something wrong. Such words cannot be thrown around just like that, but Castian seems to be trying to give hope of salvation for a young lady who does not control her words. Deciding to join the retreat group, the blonde carefully moves away, saying that she simply made a mistake and misspoke. After all, it cannot be the same person. The beauty continues to make excuses, trying to convince everyone that she didn't mean anything bad. Simply by identifying herself, she mistook the man for another person. Frowning his brows, the guy is clearly not going to accept this kind of answer. He doesn't want to put pressure on the girl, just like last time, but he doesn't know how to behave any differently. A moment flashes through my head from the previous day, when Cliff arrived at the prince's office with a denunciation. He checked all the information about Arendelle, but, as said earlier, she is completely ordinary, because in any case, she is not even a member of the Bellerophon family. Accepting pieces of paper with neatly written letters, the brunette lowers his gaze to study everything from cover to cover. It seems that the knight was right in what he said twice already. The convictions were confirmed, because the beauty's life was not so wonderful. The free brother and sister loved to mock the adopted child. There was no one to protect her. Trying not to interrupt the prince, Cliff still quietly asks if the future emperor wants to get rid of this maiden in the same way as the rest of her family. Realizing that he won't be able to evade, the brunette abruptly gets up from his seat, declaring that he has changed his mind. It will be easiest for him to deal with this situation himself, so his friend can leave everything to him. Now, being in some strange alley very close to the subject of study, the young man pulls his hood more and more. He doesn't understand where exactly he should start. Snatching the brunette out of his thoughts, in which he was clearly stuck for a long time, the blonde asks why the young man has been looking at her so strangely for several minutes now. Cleverly getting out of the situation, the guy points to her hand, saying that he has absolutely nothing to do with the girl. He's only interested in her ring, so she doesn't have to turn her nose up trying to boost her self-esteem. Without making any attempts to grab the thing, the man just turns his gaze back to the interlocutor's hand and asks her where she got this ring from and how long ago it appeared. Speaking about yesterday, the girl tries to lie as quickly as possible and get rid of this strange guy who clearly wants to get on her nerves. Approaching Arendelle, the prince bows, saying that yesterday he asked not to force him to repeat his questions twice, but to answer them the first time to speed up the process. Frowning his eyebrows, showing his dissatisfaction with his behavior, the brunette only says that he has been very busy lately. There is too much work ahead that needs to be completed quickly. Taking a step back, the interlocutor realizes that there is nowhere else to move, because right behind her there is a stone wall. You should not force a man to wait on the street, because this will be the most unwise decision for both of them. Rubbing her wrist, the girl tries to understand why Castian was only interested in the ring last time they met. He tried to snatch the thing and then simply asked to give him what was on his finger, but he couldn't give up so easily. Setting a condition, the blonde asks to tell her why the guy is so obsessed with him, and then she will be able to answer his question. Changing position and finding herself in the middle of the alley, the maiden still repeats that it would be dishonest if she were the only person to answer the question. It would be best not to hide anything. Just about to turn around and leave or start swearing, the girl is interrupted by a man's voice. It seems that she had recently been looking for someone for hours. Pointing to the crowd of people walking back and forth, the man seems to convince her that she cannot cope on her own. If she tells everything, he will be able to help, because he is an aristocrat. Freezing, the blonde realizes that she has no time left. They're pushing where it hurts, so we'll have to do it as Castian wants. Otherwise, it can only get worse. Therefore, she says that a complete stranger gave her the item. This was truly the first time the maiden had met that old lady. She was selling trinkets, and then began to insult the young lady. Wanting to apologize, she made a gift for the girl. It turned out to be quite difficult to remember the details. She was wearing a red cloak with the hood pulled down, making it impossible to see the color of her hair. The only distinguishing feature was the purple eyes. Castian freezes, trying to connect all the facts and also check in his head. He wouldn't want the girl to lie, otherwise everything could end badly. Looking into the girl's eyes, he suddenly thoughtfully utters a phrase that, it seemed, could turn everything upside down. The eyes were probably exactly the same color as the interlocutor standing opposite. The pupils shrink as the girl tries to digest all the information she has just received. Gently placing her fingers on her cheek near her eye, she realizes that when she saw the old woman, she did not take this detail into account. Looking up from her thoughts, the beauty nods. The color of the eyes really was like hers, and only now she was able to remember this meeting in small details. Sighing, the prince promises that he will help find that grandmother. Almost jumping for joy, Arendelle glows with happiness and then begins to smile. She really would like to finally find out the whole situation. The next words become the worst she's ever heard in her life, replacing the previous ones and causing the joy to fade away. She must sell her ring in exchange for help. The best solution now would be to try to escape or refuse. So shaking her head, the girl refuses to sell it, for which she is offered any payment, which naturally does not work. Finding even more impudence in himself, the guy asks to simply give the jewelry back if she really doesn't want to receive money for it. This causes a new outburst of unconscious anger. Trying again not to call the man a psycho, the lady tries to pretend that she doesn't understand anything because she had been planning to leave for a long time, because she doesn't want to waste precious time. Turning around, she quickly heads away from the alley, bidding farewell to the young man along the way. She had better stop now to avoid getting herself into trouble, but the words fell on deaf ears. Realizing that it is worth at least trying to explain herself, the beauty stops to say her intentions, completely not noticing another man in a raincoat standing around the corner. Starting to scream, the main character refuses again, realizing that she really doesn't want to sell or give away the item. During all this time, the ring became dear to her, especially since it saved lives so many times. Before she has time to say anything else, the beauty freezes. An arrow flies a centimeter from the face, which was aimed at something else, so it did not find its target. Letting out a hoarse cry, the girl falls to the ground, pressing her hand to her ear. The eerie whistle seemed to stick in my head after the gun was so close. Pulling out the sword, the man repeats his request once again, but in an instructive form. He asked to be asked, but no one wanted to listen to him, even if he could give a lot of advice on saving his own life. At the other end of the alley, directly opposite the prince, there are several people with weapons in their hands. It is immediately clear that they are serious, but their goal is unclear. Everything becomes clear when one of the guys, who is the most important, orders Castian to be captured. Later, more details will become available regarding this matter, while now all that remains is to make attempts to fight back, while all the warriors will attack one by one. The confrontation promises to be brutal, but extremely fast due to the skills of the Emperor. The brunette has been studying his skills for several years, while preparing an attack on the throne, so he easily repels the first and second attacks. Swinging his sword to the sides, dispersing the servants without any injuries, the guy tries to make his way to the main one, who obviously decided not to participate so actively in the attack. One of the guys, receiving one of the most powerful blows, is ready to fall dead, making some incomprehensible sound and trying to catch his breath. It is difficult not to get tired because of such activities in which your life is at stake. Without being distracted from the battle, the young man tries to quickly scroll through the most interesting scenarios in his head. There is quite a large group of people here, which means the question arises as to who dared to send them, knowing the status of the person who would be attacked. One of the most obvious options is the Empress. The woman clearly does not like Castian, believing that her son is obliged to take the throne simply because she is his mother and the legal wife of the Emperor. Could it have been someone else? Rising from the ground, the blonde tries to come to her senses. The fight started too quickly and extremely unexpectedly, making me feel strange. Now is the time to escape before even more people fly in. Getting ready to carefully get out of this strange alley, the girl heads for the exit, but a gloved hand grabs her neck, almost touching her cheek, on which there is a bruise due to the arrow. Castian freezes, stopping the fight around him. The eyes widen a little, showing their concern, which was completely unfounded. The man with blue hair, who had not taken part all this time, obviously monitored the condition of the future captive. Putting a knife to his throat, he insistently asks the prince to come with them. The brunette doesn't find the show funny, so he asks what will happen if he refuses. If everything does not turn out the way the enemies want, then the main character will be deprived of her head in front of the Emperor, and the sin will lie precisely on his soul. The words seem too cold even for a person like this ignoramus. He doesn't care, so guys have the right to do whatever they want, no matter what the consequences. He is no longer human in the girl's eyes. Castian would even be grateful if the knights would hand over her corpse to him after her life was taken. She has something he needs to take, and then Arendelle will cease to be of any value again. Thinking about what happened in the past, the girl is ready to cry. No one would want to die over and over again, and then have their only chance of resurrection taken away from them, leaving them all alone. Almost breaking down, realizing that everything is definitely not going as it should have been, the blonde begins to swear. She begs to be saved, because those very sensations when strength slowly leaves the body cannot be compared with any type of pain. Taking a step back, the brunette is still adamant. It seems that he has his own calculations in his head on how and where to catch benefits for himself. Smirking, after some amazing plan clearly pops up in his head, the man asks what he will get in return. He only wants one thing, so it is in his interest to get the ring at any cost. Just about to open her mouth to agree, and then simply run away and disappear somewhere between the houses, the blonde hears the words that lying is prohibited. He will immediately understand that she is trying to lie and save herself. I don't want to admit the deplorability of the situation, but this guy is now the only one who can save the beauty from certain death. Swallowing noisily, the lady tries to control herself. Clenching her hand into a fist, the beauty thinks about what she should do in such a strange situation. She can't just give up the resurrection ring because she still hasn't had a meeting with Castian, which means that if something goes wrong, she will die forever. The words again, like thunder, spread right above your head, flying into your ears. She is persistently asked not to lie in such a situation, because now her life is in great danger. Deciding to take this step, the blonde says that she will think about it later. Now the main thing is to speak as vaguely as possible so that no one understands what she means. If she could stall for time, she might be able to save her life without even using the ring. Smiling his nasty smile, the prince notices that the beauty holds her position well. Now it would be better not to be sarcastic, but to try to improve and increase the duration of your life. Judging by the behavior of the heroine, one could say that she has immortality. Trying to pretend that she doesn't know anything, the young lady says that it's pointless. She would really like to beat the arrogant young man with her own hands, but she had no right to do so. With the help of his pure and kind heart, The man even offered his help in exchange for the ring. But it seems that it is not very generous to exchange a life for having her fingers cut off to remove the thing. It doesn't matter at all. The figure of another enemy, dressed in a dark cloak, appears behind the prince. It seems as if his face is black due to shadows or some kind of paint. Freezing, while trying not to twitch so as not to harm herself, the girl tries to warn Castian, even if everything happens at the very last moment. Turning sharply, the man deftly crouches, delivering blows one after another to the guy who dared to encroach on him. The sword slides from side to side while remaining firmly held in the palm. Knocking the knife out of the enemy's hands, the young man takes a defensive stance, raising his weapon. He has no intention of taking anyone's life, at least not at the moment. Everything will be left until the very last moment. The heroine didn't even notice right away, but it's worth admitting that Castian turned out to be pretty good in battle. It would be possible to look at him from a different angle, but now it was possible to evaluate him only in this position. The only question that arises is what's wrong with the brunette now. He fights like a panther with the speed of his movements. Each of them is verified, thereby helping to stay afloat. The only question that remains is what's wrong with him now. Because of the wound, the guy wants to close his eyes and cry. He cannot show his weak side, which in fact simply does not exist, otherwise it will undermine his entire image in society. Everything would be much simpler if the knife was simply sharpened, but the situation became more complicated. There was poison on the blade, which now, after the cut, slowly began to penetrate the blood and body. Exhaling air, trying to tune in to successfully end this fight as quickly as possible, before the poison completely penetrates and seizes the blood inside, the man stands, turning his back to the couple who are standing a meter away from him. Arendelle freezes, as if rooted to the spot, no longer trying to twitch to escape the strong grip. The horror that comes somewhere from the consciousness freezes in the eyes, thereby showing excitement with a bright emotion. Breaking into a scream, the beauty tries to shout the name of a man she doesn't even know, simply calling him a psycho once again. She doesn't care at all, but if he doesn't do anything, she could die again. Feeling the unpleasant smell of something nasty, the lady tries to spin in different directions, while a napkin is applied to her mouth so that she loses consciousness and vigilance. For some reason, the enemies decided to drag the young lady with them. Memories that appear in your head, as if long forgotten, are extremely difficult to recall in your mind. The man sitting at the table opposite the boy talks about how the first emperor ascended the throne and became the ruler of Trapeum. God cared for and loved his descendants. He understood that blood would be shed for the throne more than once because of strife and human nature. He didn't want this to happen on a permanent basis until the state disappeared. It was then that he came up with a simply brilliant idea on how to optimize the required process. He hung a special symbol on them that could save thousands of lives, and this is black hair, since without them, everything was considered invalid. Rising from his chair to leave the table, the guy continued to talk about this distinctive feature. Whoever did not have it could not even claim to become a real emperor. Bending and leaning on the tabletop, the brunette comes even closer to the boy, who, perplexed, simply looks into the eyes of his interlocutor. Putting his hand on the boy's shoulder, the father asks him to remember this important detail, no matter what happens, because otherwise he will never have any chance of knowing a better life. The child is none other than Castian, who still listens attentively to his father. Snow-white hair accumulates in light streams on the head, while several of them fall on the young man's face. Deciding to ask a few questions, the boy asks why he should remember this detail. For him, as the owner of blonde hair, all doors are immediately closed, and nothing can influence this. Dropping to his knees and grabbing his son's shoulders, the man, as if in desperation, begins to try to convince him to listen to him. All this is only because he said so, and therefore has no logical explanation. Smiling a little, almost an invisible smile, the man assures that he can do something against their will. There is still a chance, which means you just have to keep hope in your head. The next lines are less clear as everything begins to blur, preparing to carry Castian back to reality, leaving him without any meaningful explanation. Someone's voice nearby shouts at the young man, ordering him to wake up, preferably as soon as possible. The eyelids seem like concrete, and due to the incredible heaviness, it is almost impossible to open them completely. On his cheek, there is a mark from the blows that they probably tried to wake up Demeter. The first picture is of a blonde, located just a meter from his body. She tries to scream for him to wake up quickly. Her face shows undisguised fear and confusion, because, probably, this is the first time she has found herself in such a situation. Bypassing the man, the lady stops somewhere to the side, thereby opening up a view of the wooden door, which is boarded up. Virgo is happy that her companion has finally come to his senses after a long blackout. Still feeling a bright burning sensation on his cheek, the guy wants to touch the place of pain, but his hands are also tied. This woman has no idea who she just raised her hand to, because if she knew that he was a prince, she would definitely have behaved completely differently. Trying not to show her emotions, the lady adjusts her voice to the desired tone. She talks about how scared she was. For some reason, the idea came to mind that the guy had simply died, and now she couldn't do anything, because no one would save her. Turning his gaze to the girl, Castian begins to notice small details that cannot be noticed immediately. Her face is quite pale, and her body is trembling. I want to hug Arendelle, but this is a normal reaction for a person who finds himself in such a situation. As if deciding on something, the girl exhales air with a loud noise accompanying it. It seems that being useful to the cause means a lot to her. Determination is displayed on the face, which shows that the lady is clearly up to something, which means that a plan can appear as if out of nowhere. Hair climbs onto your forehead, while your hands are tied, making it impossible to straighten them. Ignoring the temporary inconvenience, the girl promises to tell what she learned during all this time while the man was passed out. A little surprised, but still arrogant, the brunette continues to glare at the girl as she begins her story. They are on the beach now, so you can smell the raw fish. All this time, the beauty felt only him, so she was able to figure everything out. Arendelle turned out to be a much smarter person. After only an hour had passed since their arrival, she woke up, but pretended to still be unconscious. Acting skills and a role played at the highest level gave her the opportunity to eavesdrop on the conversations of two men in dark cloaks. Judging by what the gang said, someone should be coming here soon. All that remains is to wait for what will happen, but this does not bring any joy, because after the person arrives, they intend to kill them both and throw them into the sea. Frowning, the guy tries to digest the information he has just received in order to start thinking as soon as possible. The only surprising thing is how quickly the girl grasps the situation literally on the fly. She only needed a little time to find out everything and then draw her own conclusions. Realizing what awaits them, the brunette suddenly talks about the obviousness of things that do not seem so to the young lady, who asks what he means. Fear squeezes everything inside, even until the moment the verdict is finally pronounced. Sighing, the interlocutor says that the enemies are planning to drown them both in the sea, because if you believe the words of the heroine, they are on some island. The situation is starting to get worse. This method of murder is the easiest, because if you tie a stone to your ankle, it will be easy to end it all, and it will also be very easy to hide the crime. The cobblestone on the leg will not make it possible to swim to the surface after the body is in salt water. Horror envelops the body and mind. They tried to kill the girl in different ways, but no one had ever tried to drown her. Each time it was Castian who found the most banal options to end the life of the enemy, but now everything has changed. Bending over and ready to cry, the maiden asks what they should do, because even about the presence of the ring, she understands that such feelings will be impossible to forget. It's worth getting out of here as soon as possible, for your own good and your future life. Jumping up, the lady stretches out her hands, as if trying to point out the ropes that restrict the movement of her hands. First, you need to get rid of this happiness, and only after that look for a way out and a plan to escape from here. An ominous silence hangs in the room while the girl carefully monitors the movements of her companion. Confusion mixed with anger haunts him while she asks how he managed to pull off the trick with the trap. It looks like the lady has been hit on the head with something heavy, because she will be quite helpless considering the fact that she can't do anything. The fingers carefully slide along, trying to deftly and as quickly as possible do their job. The hands are freed, and the rope itself falls down onto the concrete floor, no longer enclosing the man in its power. Answering the stupidest question with a rather logical answer, the brunette says that he just untied the rope, thereby helping himself. There was nothing complicated here, even if at first glance it seemed completely unrealistic. Throwing some kind of iron thing into the hands of his companion, the guy explains how exactly he was able to pull it off. If you find yourself in this situation several times, the next time you will be prepared in advance. bringing with you the necessary accessories for escape. Lowering her interested gaze, the girl notices that it is just an iron bracelet. It seems that Castian was very dexterous, and therefore was able to quickly free himself with the help of this thing. Not wanting to wait any longer or wait for them to be killed, the man urges the girl on. If she understands everything, then she can get down to business to stop annoying him with her presence. It's like I'm hearing some strange sounds in my head. The pupils become smaller as the eyes begin to nervously run from side to side, trying to find the cause of the sounds and where exactly they are coming from. Turning to Castian, the maiden looks at him point blank, as if hinting that they are not alone here, or that someone is very quickly and rapidly approaching their cell. My gut is twisting because of everything that is happening. I would like to believe that she just heard it, and now their immediate end will not come. There is no one to look for support from, and there is most likely no point in running somewhere. The brunette turns towards the door, briefly examining the exit, and then turns to the blonde, who tries to convince him that they are in danger, even if the man understands everything even without words. Only one thing becomes clear. None of them are wrong, and this is not just paranoia. Heavy footsteps are heard in the corridor, which means someone is walking towards the room to be sure to complete a task that could not be done earlier. Reacting quickly, trying to resolve the situation, the guy advises the girl to hide as soon as the door opens so that she is not immediately noticed, thereby raising panic and helping them escape. Not understanding what exactly the young man means, the beauty asks again, hoping that someone will explain to her the reason, as well as the plan of action that will need to be carried out. Without explaining anything, the guy only asks not to get in the way under his feet, thereby spoiling the whole situation. Conversations are interrupted by the terrible grinding of the castle from the outside, signaling that a certain person is already very close. Swinging open the door, a short, brown-haired man enters the room, probably to check on the prisoners and their condition. It was worth reporting to management whether any of them had come to their senses or not. Freezing, the young man tries to digest what he just saw. The eyes dart from side to side, trying to detect the desired object that has disappeared somewhere. The cell is completely empty. Not a single soul, because everyone simply managed to escape so that they would not be killed or tortured. None of the subjects knew that the situation would turn out this way, and that Castian and his girlfriend would be so agile. Trying to scream to sound the alarm, the man begins to stutter. He does not pay any attention to the back exit, where a second later the prince appears, who is about to attack, thereby blocking the airway. Grabbing the neck, keeping his hand directly on the throat, the guy tries not to do much harm, but to ensure the couple has a free exit. Under all circumstances, this brown-haired man should not interfere with their plan. The man begins to slowly choke, and therefore drops everything he was holding in his hands. He tries to break free, but realizing that nothing is working, he slowly takes the knife out of his pocket. No longer attempting to escape, he simply reaches out his hand and sharply thrusts the weapon directly into the enemy's body. He did not want to do this in order to leave the man in the same condition until the owner arrived, but he had no other choice. The blonde sees everything that is happening perfectly. Stabbing someone in the leg seems to be one of the most secretive actions. Trying to hurt so that the man would not notice that he would be harmed, the brown-haired man acted meanly, which led the beauty into a stupor. Abruptly sitting down on the floor, the girl picks up the tray, which was dropped just a few minutes ago by the visiting servant. He was wearing something else, but the lady decided not to use unnecessary things in battle so as not to waste time. Furiously squeezing the thing in her hands, the girl runs closer and swings it with all her might towards the guy's head. Rage finds its solace, thereby spilling itself out. Letting out a slight cry, as if nothing would happen without it, the girl forcefully applies the iron to her opponent's head. It was impossible to restrain yourself when this ignorant person came here to further harm the couple and had already done something terrible. The brown-haired man, making a quiet sound, slowly settles in Castian's arms. The strength leaves his body, and his consciousness also turns off, while the prince, standing behind, looks in surprise at the whole picture that is happening, which he clearly did not expect to see. The girl lowers the tray down, watching as the brunette lets go of his opponent, allowing his body to fall with a crash onto the stone floor. He doesn't care about his condition, because he was the one who caused even more harm to the others. Still in slight confusion, the young man is trying to find out how the lady managed to react so quickly and work so quickly and clearly, while not having any training in such matters. Completely oblivious to the words spoken to her, the blonde squats down to be level with the Emperor's leg. There is a scarlet spot on his leg, indicating a wound that probably makes his whole body clench in pain. Asking if everything is okay, the girl quietly exhales, seeing droplets flowing down. Everything turns out in a rather strange way, because the man really cannot figure out this girl and her motives at all. Moving away from the beauty, thereby forcing her to freeze, the brunette pretends that he is not in pain at all and does not need any help. Now there are things much more important than your own health. More people should arrive soon to check why he hasn't returned. Usually the necessary task takes no more than 10 minutes, so this is all the time they have left for now. Unbuttoning his shirt, the guy carefully tries to remove one of the buttons without stopping. There should be sentries outside, through whom you should pass as unnoticed as possible. The interlocutor has already talked about this, but if you manage to get into the same situation many times, you will always be ready. The button is clutched in his fingers, while the young man is swinging the thing somewhere to the side. The hand, as if in slow motion, throws up the little thing. The young man says that his girlfriend should be ready to arrange an escape and not wait and try to look around for another 10 minutes. The place where the item was thrown lights up with a bright flame, illuminating everything around it, thereby attracting everyone's attention. Most likely, the sentry guards also noticed something was wrong from their posts. Castian seems absolutely calm when his companion freezes, continuing to blink his eyes in surprise. She expected anything but this outcome, which no longer seemed such a good plan for her. Trying to understand what these magic buttons are, the maiden is interrupted by the boy's words. He says that they should move forward. On the other side of the corridor, somewhere at the very end, worried voices begin to be heard, asking each other what this noise is, because before that everything was quiet. The guy turns around and heads to the exit to the street, which is located in a broken window and wall. If they jump, they will die, because it is quite high up there. However, if they don't, things will get much worse and worse for both of them. Still trying to somehow object, the blonde hears approaching steps, which quickly turn into running. There is still no choice, even if the Virgin would like to first find out what is happening. She has already been told that they will die if they do not escape. So, deciding to forget about everything, the beauty begins to run and then jumps into the street. A rapid flight seems 15 minutes long, even if everything happened extremely quickly. Flying towards the ground, roughly understanding what kind of collision awaits her, the girl decides to finally shout out that she does not regret anything. She had no choice, and perhaps this method would be less painful. Sinking into the abyss of water, which intends to take the body as if it were its own in the coolness, the girl emerges. There is not enough air, so the girl tries to cough up excess fluid from her lungs as quickly as possible.